Hi everybody, this is Evan again with GuideStar. Welcome back to our series called The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, where we explore the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of different facets of cybersecurity and how it might apply to your organization and the risks that you might carry. Today I'm going to talk about authentication. What is authentication? How does it work? And what's good, bad, and ugly around best practices for authentication within your organization? So first of all, authentication is just the process we use to verify that the people that are logging into your systems are supposed to log into your systems, have access, and are able to do that effectively and safely. A good program for authentication really stems around central management. If authentication needs to be centrally managed, this ensures so many good things. It ensures that IT can effectively manage and monitor the permissions, that access controls and roles and systematic approaches can be done. It also monitors login attempts and in real time with logging and the systems you have there to know who's getting in and when. It also allows for the proactive management of users as they onboard and terminate within your organization. What this allows you to do is make sure you're not seeing lost production from an employee who needs access to something on their first day of work and doesn't have it. It also eliminates insider threat risk for employees who don't need access anymore because they no longer work for you. It also provides you the ability to centrally lock out a user, whether that user is legitimate. A legitimate user may have been taken over by an illegitimate resource, by a bad actor. And being able to lock that user from a central location is key to keeping your assets safe, particularly as it pertains to workstations. It allows for setting max login attempts to avoid brute force attacks and dictionary level attacks, where password guessing, where people are going to just use your username and try a bunch of passwords until they get in. Having centralized control around locking you out if you fail to log in X number of times gives IT a control mechanism where those attempts will be thwarted. Another thing about good authentication is that wherever possible, whenever possible, up to as close to 100% of the time as you can, that you're going to leverage single sign-on and multi-factor authentication. And we've talked about multi-factor and single sign-on in other video posts, but what this really does is this protects against compromised credentials. If one of your users, 90% of attacks are still email-based compromise, looking to steal credentials through phishing, vishing, and smishing, that's all still out there. And in order to keep you safe, having single sign-on and MFA allows you to ensure that if your usernames and passwords do go away or do get taken by a bad actor, that you can make sure that they don't still gain access to the system, and you can see those logins attempting, and you can prompt people to reset passwords. The other thing that's nice about SSO as well is enforcing a strong password policy, which is we've talked about in a previous blog. People with strong passwords, those passwords tend to be longer, they tend to be complex, they're often harder to remember, but using SSO allows them to remember one strong password, use it everywhere, know that it's being managed, and they're more likely to adhere to strong password policies and procedures. Another thing with authentication is make sure that you're enforcing authentication over a VPN from remote connections. And if you can do it systemically, and if it's supported by your business, and always on VPN is a great option. What this does is ensures that the traffic that's coming from your endpoints, particularly as people have moved into the remote workforce, it ensures that they have the ability to know that the traffic that they're sending is being encrypted, which can help against sniffing and kind of man in the middle type situations. And it can also help reduce the ability for people who aren't behind your firewall to download malicious things. Having a web filter that's applied across your VPN can kind of keep people on legitimate websites that are managed centrally by your IT as well. So all of those pieces, as people are authenticating into your systems and into their workstations, that's really what drives a good program. Now let's talk about the bad. And again, bad's always in the middle here as we do these in this series. And when I say bad, and again ugly, it doesn't mean that there's nothing there and that the protections aren't somewhat effective, but that just means that there's room for improvement. And really, oftentimes in a bad organization, you'll see some centrally controlled login and authentication processes that just might have poor procedures in place. Outdated password policies, where you're not using lengths, or you're not enforcing special character use, or you're not having them change frequently, or you're allowing them to use similar passwords year over year, can make it where brute force and guessing passwords is easier. Local authentication on workstations, where you're not able to remotely lock out someone because those workstations aren't authenticating to a centralized source. That can put your data at risk for data loss from a termed employee, or someone who gets a hold of a username and password for someone and gets into that workstation. Even if they can't get otherwhere in the network, people store a lot on those machines. User creation processes and procedures being tied in with HR for hires and fires can really limit your ability to control if you're not managing centrally well or timely. For example, like I said before, somebody comes in on their first day, they may not be as productive as they were. They may spend days or even sometimes weeks figuring out what permissions they need as they authenticate into the systems. And vice versa, if IT is not able to, in a timely fashion, pull permissions from employees that have been terminated, those permissions may persist, those employees may be disgruntled, those employees may be at a new business, they may be reusing the password they used on your systems. There's so many ways that those kind of hanging users need to be managed, and the authentication piece is just so important for that. Another piece is, having most companies nowadays have a VPN. But what they don't do is, especially since COVID, is there's a large component where they only use the VPN when they need things that are accessed from the corporate network. And there's a risk involved in there. One, there are some performance concerns, but those are generally able to be resolved now, especially with kind of the decentralization of VPN technology and some of the things that are going on there. But what it does is it makes all the traffic that's going on from that machine, it loses the protection of the corporate firewall. It's unencrypted traffic, it's not being monitored, the ingress and egress isn't there, and until they hit that VPN and they're gaining those protections, you lose the ability to make sure that all the traffic that's coming and going from that machine is legitimate. So authenticating into a VPN is so important as part of your authentication processes and procedures. And the other thing is it also eliminates the ability for you to get them behind your corporate web filters and the things that keep them on sites that are safe and known and valuable for the asset that they're using for your company. So while the bad is less than ideal, most companies are able to succeed in an environment where they've got policies in place, and tightening those things up can be a really good opportunity. And GuideStar has some really good tools and processes and people who understand how to do that quickly and efficiently. If you need help, please always reach out. Now let's talk about the ugly. What I do with the ugly is I take it to as far an extreme as I can. Most companies do not live in a world where the ugly is what they're operating in. But really, when it comes down to the ugly, is they just don't have any of the things I've talked about already. They don't have centralized authentication. They're not using single sign-on MFA. They don't have an enforced password policy with strong password requirements. They don't have remote workstation lockout capability, and they allow remote work. They don't have VPN requirements for remote access, and they're bypassing firewalls through things with RDP and other things. And there's no multiple tries lockout on login. If there's an organization that doesn't have any of these controls, they're putting all their trust that their users won't make a mistake, that they won't get phished and give away their username and password, that they won't go to a site that gets malware put on their machines, that they won't log in and do anything malicious from an insider threat standpoint. And the problem with not having any of these centralized controls is that even if those people did that all the time and they were trustworthy and they made a mistake, the company would have little to no visibility into what was going on, how those things got in there, or have any real tools or processes to stop it from happening once it has started. This is a situation where you are going to get compromised. It's going to happen. You're going to end up with a system shutdown. You're going to end up with ransomware. You're going to see data theft or destruction. And it's critical for an organization that doesn't have any of these controls for how their users authenticate into their systems to get some centralized control. There's some easy ways to do that are fairly quick, and there's the comprehensive ways. So as you're looking at building out your IT structure and your plan, work with your MSP partners, work with folks like GuideStar. We have all the tools and systems and knowledge to help you implement this, but get some centralized authentication in place, get some monitoring in place, get your VPN stood up, and get the protections you need to trust your employees to do the right thing, but to help them if they make a mistake, and also be able to stop an attack should it occur. So again, like I always say, everyone has to start somewhere. If you find yourself listening to this and you think you fall into the bad or the ugly category, don't feel bad. You can do something about it. You get with your leadership, get with your IT departments, and make a plan. If you need help, reach out to GuideStar. We're here to help. We'd love to help you. We've got blue team experts that'll work side by side with your IT department and get you the protections you need at a price you can afford and an adoption rate that your company can stomach. And for more on cybersecurity, on any of these videos, please reach out or please check out our website, www.guide-star.com. Feel free to follow us on social media. And thanks. And as always, remember, make sure it's legit before you commit and don't get burned. Thanks, everyone.